the long and painful chapter of American history known as the Indian Wars, and was not a single, continuous conflict, but a protracted series of armed engagements, diplomatic failures, and brutal displacements. These conflicts spanned nearly 3 centuries, from the earliest European settlements in the early 1600s to the final somber events of the late 1800s. They were fought across the entire continent, from New England's forests to the sun-scorched deserts and the open plains of the West. The roots were complex and deeply entangled: land, sovereignty, culture, and the relentless pressure of expansion across lands long inhabited by hundreds of distinct native nations. Studying these wars is essential to understanding the formation of the United States. It reveals the profound costs of nation-building, broken promises, cultural devastation, and immense human suffering on all sides. Yet it is also a story of resilience and courage, enduring survival against overwhelming odds. The arrival of the first European colonists marked a volatile transformation. At Jamestown, 1607, and Plymouth, 1620, English settlers met the Powhatan and the Wampanoag. Initial interactions mixed trade, curiosity, and suspicion. Metal tools, firearms, and textiles reshaped native economies and power. But tensions simmered, driven by fundamentally different views of land. For native nations, land was a shared, sacred resource, used collectively for hunting, farming, and home. Colonists imposed private property, measurable, transferable, fenced. The Pequot War, 1636 to 1638, exploded from trade rivalries and expansion. English forces, allied with the Narragansett and the Mohegan, waged a brutal campaign. The Mystic Massacre set a grim precedent of total war. Hundreds of men, women, and children were killed. Survivors were killed, enslaved, or dispersed, their lands claimed. The pattern of dispossession and subjugation would repeat on an ever larger scale. Trade partnerships collapsed swiftly when colonial ambitions were challenged. The frontier advanced relentlessly. Less than 4 decades later, King Philip's War engulfed New England. Named after the Wampanoag sachem Metacom, King Philip. The conflict raged in 1675 and 1676. The goodwill of Massasoit's era had eroded into bitter distrust. Land seizures, imposed laws, and the erosion of sovereignty pushed native peoples to a breaking point. Metacom forged a multi-tribal alliance. War began in the summer of 1675. Native forces used effective guerrilla tactics, devastating dozens of settlements. Colonists responded with force, targeting warriors, villages, and food supplies. The ferocity left an indelible scar on the region. In 1676, Metacom fell and the alliance collapsed. Devastation was immense. Thousands died. Many were enslaved. Lands were seized. Power broken. The war ended pragmatic coexistence, cementing conquest and subjugation. It cleared the way for unimpeded English expansion and a grim model for future disputes. Fear and hostility hardened among colonists. For native peoples, a tragic lesson in determination to dominate the land at any cost. The 19th century, driven by manifest destiny, accelerated conflicts across the continent. The Louisiana Purchase, the gold rush, and railroads pulled settlers, miners, and ranchers into native homelands. Expansion placed immense pressure on native communities. Hundreds of treaties recognized sovereignty, yet were routinely ignored or violated. Settlers and companies seized treaty-protected lands with impunity. Resistance met military force and forced removals to shrinking reservations. In the Southwest, Apache bands under leaders like Cochise and Geronimo waged effective guerrilla war. On the plains, railroads and mass bison killings undermined tribal economies. A series of conflicts, collectively the Sioux Wars, pitted Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho against U.S. forces. Rail, telegraph, and industrial arms gave the United States decisive logistical advantages. Strategies targeted food, villages, and family life, making long-term resistance untenable. The stage was set for some of the era's most tragic confrontations. The Battle of the Little Bighorn, June 25, 1876, in Montana Territory, sparked by gold in the sacred Black Hills and treaty violations. A vast encampment gathered. Leaders included Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. Custer's reckless assault met a superior native force. Custer and over 200 were killed. Warriors defended their families and way of life. The defeat shocked America. The army redoubled efforts. Pursuit through winter forced many to surrender. The Black Hills were seized. Plains nations confined to reservations. The Red River War targeted Southern Cheyenne, Comanche, and Kiowa bands. A war of attrition. Burned camps, dead horses, no refuge. Independence was broken. Bands forced back to reservations. December 29, 1890. Wounded Knee Creek. Hunger and disease drove hope in the peaceful ghost dance. Wovoka's prophecy spread. Officials panicked. A shot rang out. Soldiers opened fire. Rifles and Hotchkiss guns tore into the camp. The result was a horrific slaughter. At least 150 Lakota, men, women, and children, were killed, many as they fled through ravines. 25 soldiers died, many likely by crossfire. Wounded Knee was not a fight against armed warriors, it was the killing of a largely defenseless community. Even spiritual renewal met overwhelming violence. The movement was extinguished. A deep, lasting wound remained on the Lakota and the nation's conscience. Snow-covered graves bear witness to the era's tragic end. Contrasting world views, communal stewardship versus private property, lay at the heart of the conflict. Native rights were often usufructuary, use and stewardship, not absolute ownership. Settlers measured, fenced, registered, bought and sold. Misunderstandings fed betrayal and conflict across generations. Over 500 treaties were made, virtually all broken when they blocked expansion, extraction, or expediency. Reservations often meant poor lands, hunger, and despair. Promised supplies were inadequate, spoiled, or stolen. Allotment broke communal lands. An assault on social structures. Children were taken, languages and ceremonies punished. Despite trauma, elders preserved stories and traditions. Leaders fought in courts for land, rights, and self-governance. Cultures endured, resilient, dynamic, and living. The legacy persists in battles over land and water, in socio-economic gaps, and in revitalization efforts. Today, native nations are vibrant. New generations reclaim heritage and build the future. The story is one of profound strength. Cultural and political sovereignty continues to grow. The Indian Wars were tragic and complex, not a simple tale of progress. They sprang from a collision of cultures, land claims, and broken promises. Causes included greed, prejudice, misunderstanding, and industrial pressures. Honoring multiple perspectives, especially native voices, is essential. Oral histories and native scholarship deepen understanding. We see humanity, strategic thinking, and resilience. Cycles of treaty-making and breaking foster justified distrust and violence. Dehumanizing others to justify dispossession has deadly consequences. Mutual respect, cultural understanding, and honoring agreements matter. Responsibility today begins with knowing the full history. We remember respectfully and support justice, sovereignty, and cultural renewal. With honesty and empathy, we honor all who suffered and work toward a more just future.